Välkommen till Malmo.
Welcome to Malmo. This is Full Ahead.
So Alistair, we've travelled by car, by plane and train, and now we're on a boat.
You missed out the bus. We did a bus as well.
Of course, yes.
Many different forms of transport today, but we have finally arrived in our destination for tonight, which is a small, medium-sized port in southern Sweden called Ystad. And what are we doing in Sweden, you might ask? Well, Nigel, maybe you can tell us.
Well, we're approached and we're invited to attend a major shipping event which is happening in Malmo in Sweden, which is why we're here. We're currently aboard the flagship, the latest addition to the fleet of Peder Ferries.
Yeah, on the Varsovia, looking out over the kind of bow, having our kind of Titanic moment, and in the main restaurant area for a kind of kick-off session. It's the 2025 Ferry and Shipping Summit. About 200 delegates here, and it's a shipping summit, but probably primarily aimed at the ferry industry. So most of the delegates here are from a ferry background. We've also got some port authorities, some suppliers, and a wide range of different people that we're going to try and talk to over the next kind of 2 days, really.
You've been to an event like this before. I haven't. This is my first time, but I've already met somebody who makes compasses and navigation systems. Somebody who does, I think he's probably underplaying it, but the kind of looking after cargo, making sure it's in the right place at the right time. Not just ferry operators. So as I say, it's a bit of a kind of a mix of people from the industry, far and wide.
Yeah, wide range of people, some faces I know, some faces I don't know, and it's going to be just nice to kind of talk to different people and see what's going on. What is the state of the kind of Northern European and Mediterranean ferry industry at the moment? How is it doing? How's the kind of economic potential downturn affecting freight numbers? What are passenger numbers like? What's the new technology on the horizon that's going to save everyone's bacon? You know, what's happening in the industry? It's going to be a real good place to gauge that and hear some different opinions from a wide range of different people. We're at the kind of pre-event almost the night before, but the conference is effectively just 2 short days. Starts late on day 1, finishes kind of lunchtime on day 2. So for most people, they can have 1 night away from their work, 1 night away from home, and they can kind of have 2 days of conference. It's going to be a really interesting few days. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to speaking to lots of different people.
This is the Full Ahead podcast at the Ferry Shipping Summit 2025.
Med Alistair Eagles och Nigel Thompson.
So let's first meet the people who make the Ferry Shipping Summit happen. Peder Gellert is the co-founder and president of the summit, drawing on his experience as a chairman and board member of several European shipping and travel companies. He and a small team bring a great range of speakers to this annual event.
I'm Peder Gellert. I have been starting Ferry Shipping Summit together with a Dutch colleague about 7 years ago now, and we wanted another concept and to make it more like a better balance between suppliers and operators. We call it actually boutique concept. If you know boutique hotels, they are a little smaller but nicer and easier to socialize, and we call it not socializing here, we call it networking. So our idea is to optimize networking between suppliers and operators. Therefore, for instance, we don't have any sit-down dinners for 2 hours where you sit with one person on the left side and the other on the right side, but it's a walking dinner. It means that you can change partner, business partner, and then you can talk with many people during a dinner.
What's your background then? How did you get interested in or involved in shipping?
Involved in shipping. Many years ago I studied at a university in Sweden, in Lund, very old, nice university, and I was asked to do some thesis as a part of my education, and that was for a ferry line. In those days, an old ferry line doesn't exist any longer, was called Lion Ferry. And I did. When I graduated, they actually said, we want to employ you. So I got on board, and I'm still on board. Not the same ship and not the same company, but I am. I think I was quoted lately for an expression saying, if you have got salt water into your veins, you can't get it out, you just have to go on sailing. So I do that. I think I have spent from the age of 25 to today, I won't tell you how old I am, many years in this industry and learned to know a lot of people. I also try to learn to know the younger people coming up in the management. So I think I have a very big network of people from Greece in the south, France, Italy, up to Norway. And that helps. And also it helps when you have good events, people will come back. And they spread the word and they talk to delegates. Next year we're going to be in Athens again, Mediterranean. We were there last year. And people are still talking about it. Why didn't I go? Some of the Greek or Italian operators said, I didn't know about it. So now they come next year. So it's building.
And some great conversations kind of in the room, in the presentations from various different people, but some of the really good conversations are happening outside the room, even right now in the kind of breakout area. There's conversations going on everywhere. I had a brilliant conversation with someone in the toilet, which sounds wrong, but it's surprising when you bump into people. But just so many conversations, so much kind of sharing of information, and it is a really fun industry, but it's a tough industry too, and lots of challenges. People coming to the podcast, the Full Head podcast, we've had so many interesting conversations, haven't we, Nigel?
Well, we started the podcast, Alistair did say, as he's my witness, back in May or April this year, that the industry is full of characters, interesting people who are all passionate about what they do. My God, he's right, because nobody, I think, has really turned us down. They want to talk, but when they do talk, as you'll hear in the podcast, they talk with such passion and conviction. I can't think of another industry where people do openly talk, share problems. These could be rivals, couldn't they? They should perhaps talk as frankly as they do. But because there's a common goal, isn't there? We're all trying to keep a very important strategic industry going at a time of big change. And you're enabling those conversations.
Yeah, I think that passion or salt water in the veins, or passion in the veins, once you get it in there, you can't get it out. And as you say, networking is probably half of the objectives here. And listening to all these people talking out there, how do you do with this and how have you solved that? It has a value. It has a very big value. And you bring it back home and start thinking maybe we should look at this or that. So we like hearing that chit-chat or networking.
Sjöfolk och deras berättelser.
Maritime people and their stories.
Well, Mike Loaghi is part of the team and the man who's editor of the newsletter that accompanies this event. A photographer, a lecturer and a journalist. He told me how they go about planning the summit.
Basically, we already started for the one next year. So it really takes a full year to organize. Of course, the last months are very, very busy, the last weeks, the last days. But in a way, we start at the beginning of the year, yes.
And the fact you've got so many people here, I think it's actually sold out capacity. So is that a good? Well, obviously it's a good sign, but does that show that it has some clout, that it matters?
Yeah, actually, it's the first time that we are really totally sold out. We see a lot of familiar faces, but a lot of new faces, and we feel that there is absolutely a need for networking, for connecting, to talk with colleagues from the industry. So that works really well. So we are very happy about that.
I know you travel all over Europe, looking at ferries and meeting people like CEOs and other people as well. When it comes to why it matters, tell me why does it matter that this kind of event happens and people do get together? Because you might be forgiven for thinking people will be rivals and not want to get together, keep their business to themselves.
Well, we try to avoid any diplomatic incidents. There's always, of course, competition, but here they can talk openly. They respect each other. We really feel this connection, this professional connection. So, and yes, indeed, we do travel a lot on the ferries. We meet the people. We really want to also for ourselves to get connected with the ferry industry.
And how is it? We're about to hear a sort of state of the industry from your perspective, somebody who is a journalist and works in this industry. How is it doing at the moment, do you think?
Well, there are a few challenges, like in freight business, the geopolitic tensions, the issues with the energy, the decarbonization. So I'm sure this is going to be one of the main topics here. Also, the digital world coming into the shipping. So a lot of new things, very exciting things. So I'm very much looking forward because we have so many highly professional people coming to speak. So I'm eagerly awaiting their presentation.
As Mike said, it's an interesting time in shipping, and the summit began with an overview of the industry offered by someone who really has got significant experience. Peder Gellert was, until 2022, Executive VP Vice President of DFDS, and he's still very much involved in shipping as a consultant, and he's been part of the industry since the 1990s. So let's hear from Peder Gellert.
My start within the ferry industry goes back to 1994. Where I started a row service in the Baltic. That was taken over by DFDS, brought me into that company, in which I stayed for 28 years. For the last 10 years, heading the ferry division, comprising freight and passenger on the commercial side, as well as the technical side as well, shipbuilding, whatnot. Decided at the latter part of 2022 to leave DFDS, early retirement you may call it, to pursue a career as non-executive. Have a few board positions now within bunkering, within startups, digital startups, also connected to the shipping industry, as well doing some advisory work for different shipping companies.
And Peder, thanks for talking to us. You gave the first presentation this morning, and an excellent presentation on kind of the state of the ro-ro and ro-pax ferry industry, ro-ro being freight ships, ro-pax being the combined freight and passenger ferries. Some of those key themes were the kind of increasing size of vessels, but equally the kind of dwindling number and the fact that the age of vessels is getting older and older as years go by. Some other themes maybe from your presentation. Can you just take us through how you see the state of the industry at the moment?
Yeah, I think I used the word legacy a couple of times, and that is really what comes to mind when I look at the industry in which I've been working for that many years. We're really slow starters in sort of getting digitized, looking at processes and moving towards a more efficient performance of our companies. And I think that goes across every company. I can't really, point at some and say they're so much better than the others. It's a grey mass to me at this point in time. And I think what strikes me when I look at statistics is that it's a static market share for both passengers and freight, as a matter of fact. So we are completely dependent upon growth in the market. The cake needs to be bigger, because otherwise we will not grow. And that is, in my view, an uncomfortable place to be in, because that is out of your control.
It surprised me on one of your first graphs you did a split of how traffic moves in kind of Europe, and the percentage of road traffic kind of be static at kind of 69%, 70% over the last kind of 10, 15 years. And you would kind of expect, with road congestion, charging structures, whatever, you'd kind of expect that road transport to start diminishing and maybe more stuff to be moving on ferries, but that hasn't really been the case, has it?
No, that was the whole idea of showing that slide going 10 years back, and exactly as you say, showing that 70% is carried on road and remains to be carried by road. And the road has thereby also taken that growth in the market, which is about 2% year on year at the same time. And roads are getting congested. We all know that. You and I went last night to a ferry port and sat for 30 odd minutes and waited in a relatively small place in the world. So we need to address that. How that can be done is of course something where you need to play all the modes of transport take all the modes of transport into play. Some are doing that in the pursuit of a vertical integration of both logistics and shipping, and thereby also controlling both all three modes of transport.
Because for the ferry industry, the growth probably isn't going to come from more goods moving. We're in a economic kind of challenging time, I guess, but the opportunity is then maybe converting more road traffic onto ships. But then legislation comes in, and environmental legislation, and are the roads being charged in the same way as the ferry operators? And that's a challenge, isn't it?
I mean, what you're looking into right now in terms of ETS Europe, ETS UK, the whole decarbonization thing, where again our industry is legacy industry. I mean, road vehicles, they're far ahead of us in terms of decarbonizing their businesses, and now it's our turn. But this will be an enormous amount of investment that needs to be made in a very unsure environment, because we don't know the answer to future fuels. We just know that it's going to be considerably more expensive than it is today. So I obviously see big opportunities in this, but I see equally many challenges ahead.
And on the kind of market for ships at the moment, people aren't really building a great number of ships at the moment. The new build levels are pretty low, but we've got an aging fleet. So when does something need to happen? When are we going to see that new building button pressed, or is it just too difficult at the moment because people don't know which technology to go for?
There is obviously a reason for the aging of the fleet, and I think that the majority of that comes from the uncertainty in terms of fuel. What kind of ship should I build? Well, I can do dual fueling and do this, that, and the other, and prepare for that, but it's a very expensive way of doing it. So hence the sort of backdrop in things now. I think as we move forward, as we realize that there's not one solution, there are probably plenty of solutions like electrification, methanol, ammonia, whatever. As we realize, well, this could be a combination of things. I think you will see people starting pushing the button for contract and contract new vessels. When it's going to happen, my guess is not going to change dramatically the next 5 years. I think we're looking into something beyond 30.
Consolidation continues in the market. There are fewer and fewer operators, and they control a bigger and bigger percentage of the fleet. There are less ships in the kind of open, free charter market. So the ports that operate, there's no free space really. So it's very difficult for new entrants to come into the market now. In the way that I was part of a small startup back in 1996, I don't see how someone could do that now. It's very difficult for a newcomer.
As I mentioned, I also come from a small startup, and I don't see that happen again neither, because what I see is that the contracting of vessels will come from incompetent large operators. It's not going to be tonnage providers taking a chance and building on spec. That's not going to happen. So you will have, say, the big five or equally so in Europe, probably starting to push the bottom. You have seen movements in the Mediterranean Sea. You have seen one big operator there starting. You have seen someone in the Nordics as well, also starting small scale to order vessels. But it is still on a very, very low level. It's not enough to sort of cover what is needed. However, we are also in a situation right now where volumes are dropping. So who would go out and order things now without really knowing when do we see an uplift in volumes?
Just finally, I know you need some lunch, but on the passenger market, obviously Ropax ferries, we've seen COVID obviously devastating for the passenger market. Passenger volumes coming back, but maybe not to kind of pre-COVID levels. How are operators dealing with passenger numbers now, particularly on Ropax ferries? Are they changing designs or changing their outlook about how they deal with passengers and freight?
I believe that in many areas we have regained sort of volumes to pre-COVID levels. It's plus minus, I would argue. But what we also see is that when new Ropaxes are built, there is a bigger sort of focus on freight. That is also, I mean, it's a full year thing. There is no sort of high season and low season, so they skip the seasonality and get a more stable income. So you'll probably see Ropax vessels increase in size for freight lift. And what we've also seen that there is a slight drop in the number of passengers per vessel on new buildings. Not a particular big difference, but still so. So that's probably the direction it will take. However, I mean, when you look further ahead, will there be tourist passengers? Will you bring, as an individual, will you bring your own vehicle across? going from the UK to the continent. I'm not sure about that. Will you even drive your own vehicle? I don't think so. So, and we're looking now at ordering stuff that should stay alive and can be depreciated over 35 years.
Thank you very much. I mean, we've got some interesting music playing in the background, and I'm not sure if this music is kind of depressing or uplifting. And after your kind of talk, I wasn't sure whether we should be optimistic or pessimistic about the future. If you had to choose one, which one would you go for?
Well, I asked you in the start of my presentation to reflect, and that's all I can ask for.
This is the Full Ahead podcast at the Ferry Shipping Summit 2025.
Well, Peder Gellert there talking in detail about how he sees the industry. Did a SWOT analysis, didn't he, talking through about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats. I must admit, I was surprised at this level of traffic. Was it 18%? It hasn't moved for years.
Yeah, 18% being the amount of traffic within Europe that travels by water effectively. So still the huge majority of traffic moving by road, and all the challenges that brings with congestion and everything else. And that percentage hasn't really changed. Maritime traffic hasn't really done that modal shift. It's been very static for the last 10, 15 years. So quite surprising in a way.
And also this, I was amazed to hear the International Maritime Organisation, who met, I think it was just a few months ago, was it October, and effectively having a coffee break for the next year about kind of when it comes to emissions. I mean, for a ferry company, that must be, frustrating to say the least.
I mean, some of the stuff around kind of legislation is really, really hard to deal with, and everyone's kind of guessing what happens next. Nobody really knows, and the IMO sit at the top of the table and, can't really decide either, to be honest. It's a very difficult situation for ferry companies to deal with.
We spoke to a leading chief executive of one of Europe's biggest and best known, perhaps, ferry companies as well, didn't we?
Yeah, Christophe from Brittany Ferries, operating primarily on the Channel, but also now to the Channel Islands. There was a really interesting chat with Christophe talking about Brexit, the pandemic, the Channel Islands, and lots of other challenges that Brittany Ferries might have at the moment.
Oh, they're going well. I guess like any other companies, when you were that close to pass away because of COVID, and you survived, and you're now back to business, I always like to remember, how much I enjoy life, and we enjoy being back to normal, because we all forget, but COVID was extremely brutal, not only for us, but it almost stopped everything from one day to another. And it's good to enjoy life as we're now back to kind of a normal life, although a complicated life, right, with everything that's ongoing.
Do you think you've recovered from COVID? You say it was such a bad time for
kind of recovered. Yeah. We still have a little bit of medicine in the sense that we still have to repay a loan from the French government. That is part of the deal. So we've not fully recovered, if you want, from a financial point of view, technically. But yeah, from an activity point of view and from everything else, yeah, we've recovered. But we have new challenges, haven't we? And we are in the post-Brexit world, because one thing on the Channel market people tend to forget is that when you look at the numbers, pure fact, the market of freight and passenger in 2025 is still broadly 20% less than it used to be in 2019.
So people haven't returned in the same numbers post-COVID?
We've lost a lot of French market because, of course, now with Brexit, when you're French, you can no longer visit the UK without a passport. And remember, in France, we have an ID card, so we've lost, let's say, proportionally a bigger chunk of French market. But even on the British market, it's not quite what it used to be. And the freight is also broadly 20% below. And the worst on the freight side, and again, I'm just quoting facts, is that in 25 versus 24, the passenger market grew 2%, 25-24. But the freight is still 2% down, so it's still kind of melting a little bit. So all to say that the overall market, post-Brexit, is not what it used to be.
And then on top of that, you've got some new challenges with legislation, of course, not just Brexit, but environmental legislation that is not easy, is it?
It's not easy. And in the ferry business, we're all affected by ETS, Fuel EU, and that's new cost and additional cost, because we've not got any other costs that have been removed. So it's additional cost in an economy that is not buoyant, and it's sometimes a bit tough to pass on the cost to your customer, right? So, yeah.
But at the same time, you have to invest in new tonnage. You have to have the right ships in the right place, I guess.
Exactly, and I think in BF we were quite wise in the sense that, big thanks to our new generation of vessels, the famous flexers, we're not paying quite as much ETS as we would have otherwise. So I guess we already have some kind of return on investment because, of course, we have a newer fleet, but of course we're paying and we're emitting less carbon. So yes, but it's a challenge.
Because I say emitting less carbon in terms of legislation is important, but that saves money as well. You're burning less fuel.
Sure, less fuel, less ETS, and that's where it was wise move to be early mover and to take on those new vessels. And I guess as you're asking me about Brittany Ferries and maybe those new vessels, I think one of the milestone in our industry, it's not us, but it's Stena, because with this flexer concept, they've not only sold or chartered 5 to us, but they've been now 15, and they've cracked on something very interesting because you've got a flexer on Dover-Calais for DFDS that is no cabin whatsoever, and with the same hull, the same design, we've got the Saint-Malo with 385 cabins, yet it's the same basic design. I think they've achieved something.
Yeah, I've always found it mad in this industry how someone wants to start a ferry route and the first thing you do is design a ferry. And you know, if you want to start an airline, you don't go and design an airline. If you want to start a truck company, you don't go and build a new truck, you buy an existing one. So the E-Flexers from Stena is a very good example of a standard kind of hull shape being adapted into slightly different models, and that reducing the overall cost. And also, if that's a ship that's very good on emissions, then like you say, maybe that's the way the industry should be going forward, more collaboration.
I think it's what's happening, but yeah, I'm glad we've done it. Of course, the romantic, because I'm sure, not sure so much in Sea-Track at the time, but with our passengers, we've got some romantic passenger. Say, oh, but every ship are the same, and it's not the same, and yeah, well, are you going to pay 20% more if I give you a brand new, one state-of-the-art, one design ship? No, you're not. So at the end of the day, but yeah, I think it takes a little bit the charm of every ferry being a prototype, but from an industry point of view, it's common sense.
And your latest adventure into the Channel Islands now, just to bring this really up to date. So how are things going down there for you?
Well, I think it's well documented that we now have a contract to Guernsey only, and I can say that we've had a good season in 25 to Guernsey, and it's completely merged now within Brittany Ferries, and I think it's farewell to Condor, and now it's just Brittany Ferries Guernsey as part of Brittany Ferries altogether.
Does it make sense to you to have the two islands of Guernsey and Jersey being operated by two different operators, or would you prefer not to say?
Well, factually it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's two islands that are very close to one another, and of course there are synergies, and in terms of operation they are much more rational if you have one operator. Now, I shan't comment on the reason why we are where we are, but factually I think we could all agree that it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, it's their choice, it's two independent governments, they decided to do it independently that way. Just get on with it.
And you're obviously having fun doing it, but you're here at the conference for 2 days. Why are you here? You're here to meet some people, have some discussions?
Well, it's always interesting to mingle with the industry. I've never been before, and I'm quite curious to see the different format and the fact that there are more ports, maybe a little bit more human-sized than other conferences. So, yeah, very interested to mingle, and because of COVID and because of other topics, maybe for the last 2 or 3 years we didn't mingle as much. So it's about time we come back and discuss, because it's by talking to people in the industry that you also get ideas and draw your brain.
Well, thank you for mingling for 5 minutes with the Full Ahead podcast, and yeah, have a great day. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you. Cheers, Christophe.
Sjöfolk och deras berättelser.
Maritime people and their stories.
Well, what a fascinating first day. A variety of people from all over Europe coming to talk to the Full Ahead podcast, and with all different stories as well and different kind of outlooks on how the industry is progressing at the moment. What's your take so far?
I just thought it was a really interesting day and some real big guys from the ferry industry. And that panel debate midway through the day where we saw kind of 8 of the key players all being asked the same kind of question and seeing what their thoughts are on various different topics, from the kind of green agenda. AI is featured quite heavily in IT, and people thinking that ferry industries may be lagging behind a bit compared to the airline industry or maybe even the cruise industry, and lots to learn. But yeah, it was just a kind of fascinating day, wasn't it? And just people from so many different countries with maybe different challenges, different viewpoints, and some really interesting stats as well, like how maritime transport hasn't really made any inroads into how stuff moves around Europe. Really almost statically about 70% of total traffic still moves on the road, and yet we all know about congestion and the problems on the roads, and surely there's an opportunity there for some more modal shift and maybe even coastal ro-ro services. We've seen getting stuff from Turkey into Italy, you can drive that, but now there are ferry services really successfully doing that. And is there a role for more of this kind of coastal ro-ro, getting more traffic off the roads? But yeah, 70% of stuff still moving on road is a very high percentage, and there are lorry driver shortages, so maybe that's going to really grow the freight ferry sector in the future. I think the passenger sector is tough, and it needs ships like the St Malo to really encourage younger people on. There was a good stat again about how the average age of a passenger on a ferry is increasing over time. It's less trendy maybe to take a ferry than it used to be. I don't know, but how do we get young people travelling by ship? Or will people still travel with cars in the future? Will people even own cars in the future? Or will we go on to the kind of leasing model for cars? And if we do want a car when we go for our French holiday, will we just grab one the other side? I don't know.
I'll tell you what, it's a good sign we've been busy today, because my iPhone has died, and yet we've been talking about battery power on ships, and apparently the future is going to be batteries, isn't it? The duration, the kind of range of ships is going to increase, and has done in recent years. We were hearing from a designer, weren't we, about his vision for the future, and it's certainly electric, isn't it?
It is, but you've got these 8 top executives from 8 different ferry companies, and you're asking them what's the real solution, and nobody actually really knows. No. And you can't just stop, as we heard from a number of them, you still have to invest in tonnage, and people are basically guessing and trying to decide what's the best technology, and maybe leaving options to do things in the future. But yeah, battery technology, particularly on short routes, has to be the way forward. But even that has its challenges. I think there are some battery routes that could exist today, and the reason they don't exist is not because the ships aren't able to be built or people don't have the willingness to build the ships. It's they can't get the power to the ports. It's not just a sea problem, it's a land problem, and getting enough power to the ports to charge the ships up quickly enough, that's proven very challenging. Although in some ports, like the port of Kiel, they've done a huge amount of work on electrification for not for charging, but for plugging in ships when they're in port. But yeah, there's still an awful long way to go, I'd say, on that.
So do you think innovations, it'll be alive and well despite kind of this idea of standardisation? That was the other word that was mentioned alongside the digital word. So do you think that there is still scope for people to kind of make the forge their own path, try and do things differently and not just follow the pack?
I think there is, but I think also you've got to bear in mind the legislation and regulations that exist. We heard from the ship designer from OSK about how they could build an aluminium ferry that would be 35% more efficient than its steel counterpart. But they can't do that because current legislation, unless it's a fast craft, doesn't allow aluminium as a material to build these hulls. So, there are challenges even in kind of the legislation and what you're allowed to do. So maybe there'll be some changes there in the future, and that will help. But I'm coming away from day one thinking there are loads of challenges, there's lots of possibilities, but there aren't really any clear answers to the best way forward. And even on digitalisation, there are so many different companies doing it, and you kind of think, maybe there should be one doing it, and the sharing and harmonising the information. And but yeah, it's been a fascinating day one, hasn't it? We probably need a bit of sleep. I think there's a meal and a bit more chit chat, but then we'll get some sleep, and we can hit day 2 with renewed enthusiasm and vigour, Nigel. So by far the best bit has been bringing the Full Ahead podcast on the road. Over in Sweden. It's been great, and people coming up to us saying, we listened to the podcast, or can we have the details of the podcast, or where can we find it? And it's really growing, and people really kind of getting excited by it, and maybe the first of many little adventures abroad, Nigel. Let's see how we go.
Keep that passport safe. Thanks very much. Cheers.
This is Full Ahead podcast at the Ferry Shipping Summit 2025. Tack för att du lyssnade.